Hello there, world of tankers. Welcome back to another one of my videos. I am Blitz, and today I'm going to be talking about the Jagdtiger 8.8. Now, this tank is coming to the stores for the price tag of 5,000 gold. Not only do you get the tank, you get a camouflage with it, you get 500,000 credits, and 30 days of premium. So it's a pretty good deal for only the price tag of 5,000 gold. But as we know, Wargaming likes to be sometimes a little suspicious with the very cheap tanks they sell. So today I'm going to be talking about the Jagdtiger, telling you all about the vehicle, the stats, the armor, how to run it, and of course whether or not you should be dropping some of your hard-earned money to pick up this tank. Now, when looking at the stats of this vehicle, the first thing you'll probably notice is that it actually has a very healthy amount of hit points at 1,400. When you compare that to a tank like the ISU or the RHM, they're only sitting at like 1,000, 1,100. So the fact that this tank gets that extra little bonus hit point pool makes it so much more better for being aggressive and going up and brawling with the heavies. Now, when talking about the guns on this tank, it has two options. You can run the 8.8 as it says in the name, and you can also put on a 10.5. Now, in this video, I'm going to be talking about the 10.5 because I just feel it's a better gun, it's got more damage, it's got more penetration, better shell velocity. The only thing it has worse of is aiming time. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the 10.5, but it has a crazy amount of damage per minute at 3,156. And when you pair that with the 225 millimeters of standard penetration this tank gets, you are going to tear into pretty much any opponent you do have on the battlefield. And if you're up against tier 9 heavies that you can't penetrate, no problem, load the premium ammo, and you're going to have 285 millimeters of penetration, which is easily going to get through pretty much anything you are aiming at. The HE on this tank also is very good with the average damage at 420, and with 60 millimeters of penetration, that means that if you have the rear of any medium tank or even some lightly armored heavies, you are going to easily tear into them, dealing upwards of 4,200 damage per minute. And when looking at the gun handling of this vehicle, it gets even better. 2.17 second aiming time, and with a dispersion value of 0.290, you really won't ever miss in this tank. Even when moving, the dispersion factors are excellent at 0.18. Really, this is one of the most accurate guns you will find on the battlefield. And not to mention, the tank has 7 degrees of gun depression, which makes it pretty flexible on most terrain you do get stuck on. Now, there's one very important thing about this vehicle, and that is the mobility. And you'd be thinking, well, it's this big German tank destroyer. Most of the German tank destroyers are not the fastest. But believe it or not, even though this tank weighs 70 tons, it can still go 38 kilometers per hour forwards. And the power-to-weight ratio is 10.89, which isn't great, but on flat ground, you can actually get up to 38 kilometers per hour and stay there, which is something that's really nice because, again, the thing weighs 70 tons, which means that you can actually ram some of the lightly armored vehicles for 400, 500 damage sometimes. And as well, the tank isn't actually that slow on the traverse speed. It can go 34.72 degrees a second, which definitely isn't fast, but again, for the size and weight of this vehicle, it's not too bad, and I really don't find myself being flanked that much unless there's a vehicle like a T-49 or some of the, faster light tanks that can really take advantage of your weak side armor. And on the topic of armor, you can see that the front of the tank is definitely not the most armored. It's only got about 207 millimeters on the upper plate, which is definitely thick when you compare it to like tier 7 penetration, but pretty much every tier 8 vehicle is going to easily penetrate through your upper armor. As well, the lower plate's only about 160 millimeters thick. However, you can see around the gun mantlet, it's about 250 millimeters thick, all on the top superstructure. And when you're using the 7 degrees of gun depression this vehicle gets, that upper plate on the tank becomes now 250 millimeters thick. Your superstructure is 260 millimeters, so it's very, very hard to penetrate this tank. You can see there is a weak spot on that little circle on the front of it, the gun port. However, it's actually very hard to hit that when you are in battle, and a lot of people don't even think to shoot at it, so that's not really much of a weak spot. But you definitely want to hide your lower plate at all times running this tank. But you can see the side armor is really, really weak. In fact, it's so weak, 85 millimeters is weak enough that an RHM or an ISU or any 152 millimeter can easily penetrate high explosive through the side of your tank. And as well for the rear armor, 90 millimeters on the lower and 80 millimeters on the upper still means that RHMs and ISUs and even a T-49 can penetrate an HE on the rear of this tank. So you want to make sure you hide that weak side armor and the rear armor as much as you can, because if you don't, you are going to be punished greatly for it. Now onto the topic of running this vehicle. The first thing is you have to read the enemy lineup. You can't just be like, oh, okay, I'm just going to push over here and I'm going to do well. If you want to do well in this tank, you have to know what you're going up against, because this is the type of tank where you can either run it really aggressive as a heavy tank, or you can sit at the back of the map and run it like a tank destroyer. And I like to run it aggressive as a heavy, but to do that, I have to read what tanks they have. Because if I notice, well, they've got 49 and RU and they've got less heavies, then I'm not going to go fight the heavies because there's no point. I'm going to be flanked and killed. So I'm going to sit at the back of the map and run it like a tank destroyer and use the vehicle like that. But you'll see in some of these replays that I'm going to run the tank more aggressive. I'm going to be brawling with this VK45 right here. So there's definitely scenarios where you can run it heavy, but you also can't. And I would definitely suggest not to be over aggressive in this vehicle. Last night I was running the tank and, I was getting annoyed with the team, so I was starting to running it more and more aggressive, and I'm thinking, well, it'll be fine pushing aggressive because it's got such a good damage per minute, but it really doesn't do that well pushing super aggressive against mediums or any vehicle that can really flank it, because once you have two people aiming at you, you don't have a turret, so it's not like you can just turn to shoot them. So when you have two people aiming at you, if just one distracts you in the front and the other one comes up behind you, that is the end of your tank. So the main thing I would suggest when running this vehicle is not to overextend yourself. Make sure to stay with a teammate, or make sure to stay at least far enough back to where you're not going to be immediately flanked behind the rear and then shot at the front as well, because there's nothing you can do at that moment. And as you saw on Armor Inspector, the front of this vehicle does not have bad armor. And if you're using your gun depression, most chances are you're going to bounce 50-60% of the shots that are coming at your tank, unless they're heat rounds penning your superstructure. But really, it has very reliable armor. And the nice thing is, if you're using your gun depression and you're pushing it on the spot where you can hide your lower plate, use the gun depression, you have such a good damage per minute that even if somebody's trying to shoot heat at you, they're losing damage while you're just keeping shooting at them and shooting. And really, nobody wants to sit out in front of this tank for too long because they are going to be crawling back for safety. It has just one of the best guns, honestly, on the battlefield for a tier 8 tank. I haven't pulled this tank out in, I'd say, 5 or 6 months, and I didn't think much of it, but I pulled it out because it came in the store and I was like, okay, I'm gonna make a video on it today. And honestly, I'm actually really liking it just because that gun is so nasty. It's accurate, it's really deadly, and people don't understand how deadly this gun is half the time until they pull out in front of it and they've been tracked and then they're just constantly being shot. And one of the best tips I would definitely suggest to do with this vehicle is you want to wiggle it. When somebody's aiming at you and you're right in front of them, you want to wiggle the tank back and forth because it's going to make your vehicle just so much harder to penetrate. German vehicles usually have very, very thick tracks. And what that means is that if somebody hits a shell into your track wheel, yeah, it might track your tank and it might stop you, but they're not going to damage you, which means you're coming out on top. And I would also suggest, as you can see me in this game here, I am running 2 repair kits. You want to run the multi-tool, and then you want to run the repair kit in general, because this vehicle does get tracked a lot. The tracks are big, as I said, they're big German tracks, so you want to make sure that if you get tracked once, you can easily repair, and if you get tracked again, you still have the ability to come back and snap them if they think you are immobilized. And on to the question of, is this tank worth the price tag? I definitely think it is. For 5,000 gold, not only are you getting the tank, you're also getting 30 days of premium, 500,000 credits, and a camouflage with the vehicle. And it is a very, very good credit earner. I can earn upwards of 80, 90,000 credits a game, and they're not, crazy games where I'm doing 3,000, 4,000 damage. I'm just doing simple games with 25, 2,600, because you don't have to shoot premium ammo. Half the time you survive the games because it has that very large amount of hit points. It's got pretty good armor. So because of that, you do make a hefty amount of credits. And it's also a pretty beginner-friendly vehicle. As I said, it's got a good gun, good penetration, it's got pretty good armor, and it's not too slow. So a beginner will do very well in this tank. However, as I said, you do still need to know where to push on the map, where to use your gun depression, when to push, when to stay back and camp at the back of the map. And those are some things you do need to know when running this vehicle. So always make sure you read the team lineups to know where you're going to push, what you're going to do, because if you don't, you are going to struggle greatly in this tank. I hope you did enjoy this review though, and stay tuned for more content. Tomorrow I'm thinking about doing a review on the Tiger after the buff. But as always, make sure to hit that like button down below, subscribe as well if you haven't already. And other than that, guys, I hope you have a great day, and I will see you in the next one.